we take Dipallidium first, this is another example of a ubiquitous parasite present all over the country and is transmitted by accidental consumption of fleas. Now this isn't a very nice thought, but cats and dogs ingest fleas all the time by grooming themselves or eating poor creatures that are infested with said fleas, and then they get infected by tapeworm and they pass segments in their faeces. Now, consequences for cats and dogs isn't much above that. They might get slightly itchy bottoms, they might lose a little bit of weight, but not terribly pathogenic. The psychological impact on owners, though, is quite significant and reduces that desire for owners to interact, cuddle their pets, which is so important. It's needless to say, no owner wants tapeworm segments in their bed. That's reason enough to want to get these infections under control. It is a zoonosis. It's not a common zoonosis and it's not a dangerous zoonosis, but if you have fleas in the environment and then you're getting bits of flea under your fingernails when you're sort of handling your dog, it's possible that that could be accidentally consumed, get into your body, and before you know it, you have your own 50-centimetre friend when you start shedding segments in your faeces. If you'd have known that flea prevention could have avoided it, you may not be entirely happy. So for Dipallidium, flea control is very much the method of control. You may need to initially tapeworm treat, but it's the fleas that are transmitting this tapeworm. Now, in comparison, taenias are contracted through the consumption of raw, undercooked offal or meat, primarily from sheep, in the case of dogs, primarily from sheep and cattle, but also rabbits, and in the case of cats, very much through hunting. Rabbits, small furry creatures, can develop these tapeworms. Again, the consequences for cats and dogs are very, very low, but you will again get this segment shedding, which is unpleasant. In the case of dogs, though, the consequences are economic for the farmer, and this is a little bit of a sort of forgotten tragedy, is that sort of across the country, regularly farmers suffer unnecessary significant economic loss because cattle and sheep foodstuffs are contaminated with taeniid eggs passed by dogs. So I think we have a responsibility as vets and dog owners, if dogs have exposure to sheep and cattle pasture where they might worry carcasses, if they're on raw offal or unprocessed raw diets, if they scavenge, then we have a responsibility to monthly tapeworm to keep this segment shedding under control. But you can see that for taenia it's very much a lifestyle situation, and anti-dog fouling, preventing access of dogs off lead onto pasture. Measures like this can also big steps, if you can, avoiding consumption of raw offal, unprocessed raw diets, can also break the tapeworm life cycle and help, but regular deworming is an important part of that strategy. Then finally, we have hydatid disease, which is a very local tapeworm in the UK. It's present all over Europe. In the UK, we thought that it was limited, and largely is limited, to parts of Wales and the Western Isles of Scotland. And here has caused significant human disease. So these tapeworms, compared with their, giant, mighty neighbours, are tiny, just a few millimetres long, do nothing, have no visible effect on their dog host. Dogs act as the primary host, carrying these tiny tapeworms, but the eggs passed in the faeces are immediately infective. Now, if a cow or a sheep consumes these eggs, they get big cysts, which actually do them remarkably little harm, but will lead to more awful condemnation and economic loss. The worry, though, is if we consume these eggs, then, either direct from the dog's faeces or because of contaminated environments, then we have the potential to form these cysts, and they can do a lot of damage to our bodies. Very, very significant zoonosis. And this has been an ongoing battle in Wales. So through regular tapeworming and through education campaigns, the Welsh Government has worked very, very hard to try and eliminate hydatid disease, and almost succeeded in 2001, and then unfortunately the foot and mouth crisis came along. It was very untimely, things got a bit out of hand again, and since then it sort of waxed and waned. There are a few human cases in Wales every year. Small proportion of dogs remain infected. So very important parasite for Welsh vets to consider, and for those working in the Western Isles of Scotland. What we've discovered, though, is that these cysts are getting around the country versus abattoir spread. Now, we don't know for certain whether that has exposed dogs across the rest of the country to the parasite through the consumption of this raw offal. Now, that's going to occur most likely through hunts and through farm feeding of offal. There is a project called the Hydata Project, which is currently looking at dog faeces to see if hydatid antigen, Echinococcus antigen, is in the faeces, to see if those dogs have been exposed. In the meantime, we have to assume that through lifestyle they potentially are being exposed, and the lifestyle risks are very similar to Taenia worms, so you can do both together and kill two birds with one stone. We really don't know if once, twice a year sort of treatment for tapeworm makes any difference to animal health at all. What it won't do, though, is have a significant impact on shedding if the dog and cat's lifestyle is constantly re-exposing them to infection. So what this means is if you're not deworming cats, well, really monthly, certainly every other month, for tapeworm, you're going to see segments in the faeces, which is what most clients are going to not want to see. In the case of dogs, if you're not tapeworming at least 4 times a year, that's the evidence for Echinococcus, but really monthly, then again, you're not going to prevent egg and segment shedding.